Untamed horse is tamed by a humble young man. What happens next left them all. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting an orange glow across the rugged landscape. The wind rustled through the tall grasses that stretched endlessly, meeting the horizon in a blur of wild beauty. Ali, a young man of no more than 20, walked quietly through the vast plains, his boots kicking up the dust beneath him. His clothes were simple, worn from the hardships of village life. His face, though youthful, carried the traces of someone who had worked hard every day, never asking for much, but always giving everything he had. Ali had lived in the village for as long as he could remember. Life had not been easy for him, and his family had barely enough to make ends meet. But his heart had always been full of kindness, a kindness that extended not just to the people around him, but also to animals. He had learned from his grandfather that patience and humility were the keys to understanding the world around him. This simple wisdom had guided him through his life. On this particular afternoon, Ali found himself in the remote part of the wilderness, near the edge of the village. He had heard rumors of a wild horse that had been spotted in these parts, a magnificent creature, free and untamed. Some said the horse was dangerous, others claimed it was a sign of something greater, but one thing was certain. No one had ever been able to approach it. Ali wasn't sure why he had come here today. Maybe it was the stories that had sparked his curiosity, or perhaps it was the hope that, for once, something beyond his routine life would call to him. He paused at the top of a small hill, his eyes scanning the landscape. For a moment, everything was still, the kind of silence that only existed in places untouched by time. Then, through the distance, Ali saw it. A shadow moved against the backdrop of the setting sun. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, but then it came into focus, a magnificent stallion, its coat a dark chestnut, its mane flowing in the wind like flames. The horse was running, galloping with the grace and power of something born of the wild. It was beautiful, fierce, and free. Ali stood frozen, watching in awe. He had heard the stories, but to see the creature with his own eyes was something else entirely. It was as if the horse existed in a world of its own, far removed from human influence. The wildness of the animal stirred something deep inside him, a feeling of both admiration and wonder. The horse's eyes, sharp, intelligent, and wary, seemed to lock with his for just a moment. In that brief second, Ali felt a strange connection, as if the animal had acknowledged his presence. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the horse turned and disappeared into the distance, vanishing like a ghost into the endless expanse of the plains. Ali took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. He had only seen the horse for a few moments, but the experience left him with a sense of longing, a feeling that something important had just slipped away. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt an urge to follow, to learn more about this creature that had captivated his heart so completely. Without thinking twice, Ali began walking toward where the horse had disappeared, his steps quickening as a sense of purpose took hold. He wasn't sure what he hoped to find, but he knew that something deep inside him had shifted. As he moved forward, Ali heard the faint sounds of voices behind him. He turned and saw a group of villagers, their faces etched with concern. The village elders, usually calm and measured, now appeared agitated. "Ali," one of them called out, "what are you doing out here? The wild horse is dangerous. You don't know what you're getting into." Ali paused, looking back at the group. His heart sank slightly. He knew the warnings, but something inside him refused to believe that this horse was a threat. He could feel the animal's power. Yes, but there was also something else, an unspoken sadness, a sense of isolation. The horse was not a mere beast. It was a soul that had been scarred by something that had made it wary of the world. "I'll be fine," Ali called back, offering a small, reassuring smile. "I just want to see it. I'll be careful." But the villagers were not convinced. They had heard of the horse's temper and its attacks on anyone who tried to get too close. Some of them had even seen it chase away those who dared to approach. "Ali, don't be foolish," another elder shouted. "That animal will tear you apart." But Ali, driven by something deep within, didn't turn back. He knew the risks, but he felt an undeniable pull to understand the creature. It was as though fate had brought him here, and he couldn't let fear stop him from discovering what lay ahead. With a final glance at the villagers, Ali turned and continued walking, his eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of the wild horse. The journey was not just about finding the animal, but about understanding it, about seeing the untamed spirit that resided within. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plains, Ali moved deeper into the wilderness. The horse was somewhere ahead, its presence felt but unseen, and Ali, humble and patient, was determined to meet it on its own terms, no matter what happened next. The evening air had grown cooler, the sun now dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the rolling hills. Ali had been walking for over an hour, his footsteps light but steady, his senses attuned to the sounds of the wilderness. The occasional rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the soft whisper of the wind through the tall grasses. All these things had become familiar to him. But there was something else in the air, something that felt different tonight. The wild horse, the one he had glimpsed earlier, was out there somewhere, and Ali could feel its presence, as if the animal were watching him from the distance. It was both exhilarating and unnerving. The villagers' warnings echoed in his mind, but they were not enough to deter him. He wasn't afraid of the horse. In fact, he felt a strange connection to it, a pull he couldn't explain. After walking for some time, Ali came to a small clearing, surrounded by thick brush and trees. The ground was soft here, with patches of wildflowers and tall grasses swaying gently in the wind. He paused, letting his eyes scan the area. The silence was almost overwhelming. It felt as though the world had held its breath. Then, from the edge of the clearing, he saw it. The wild horse stood there, just a few meters away, its coat glimmering in the fading light. The animal's head was lowered, as if it were grazing, but Ali could see the muscles in its legs tense and ready. The horse's coat was a deep chestnut, with black streaks running through its mane, making it appear even more majestic. Its eyes, dark, intelligent, and watchful, fixed on Ali as he slowly stepped forward. Ali's heart skipped a beat. He had never been this close to the horse, and in this moment, he felt both awe and respect for the animal. The horse was a symbol of freedom, a creature unbound by the constraints of the world. But there was also something else, something in the way it looked at him, something almost human. Ali took a deep breath, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He had no experience with wild horses, but he knew enough about animals to understand that sudden movements or loud noises would only drive it away. He needed to be calm, patient. His grandfather had always said that a creature would trust you if you gave it time and respect. The horse snorted, lifting its head slightly, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Ali took another step, and then another, each movement measured, each one calculated to not startle the animal. He spoke softly to it, his voice low and soothing. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. "I just want to understand you." The horse's eyes flicked to Ali's face, and for a moment, the two locked eyes. There was a pause, a tension in the air that felt almost electric. Ali's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't look away. He had no plan, no agenda. He was simply there, existing in that moment with the horse, hoping it could sense his sincerity. For what felt like an eternity, the horse remained still, its gaze unwavering. Then, to Ali's surprise, it took a tentative step forward. The ground beneath its hooves was soft, the grass brushing against its legs. Ali's breath caught in his throat, and he remained frozen, watching as the animal approached him, inch by inch. The tension in the air thickened. The horse's ears flicked back and forth, as if listening to the wind, to any sound that might alert it to danger. But it didn't turn away. Instead, it kept moving forward, its steps cautious but steady. Ali's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to show the horse that he was no threat. He slowly reached into the satchel at his side and pulled out a small bundle of oats, a simple offering. His grandfather had taught him that food was a gesture of peace, a way to create a bond between humans and animals. He held it out in the palm of his hand, the oats visible, but he didn't move. The horse stopped, just a few feet away, its nostrils flaring as it smelled the oats. Ali held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Would the horse take the offering? Would it run away? He didn't know, but he was willing to wait. For a long moment, the horse simply stood there, studying the oats in Ali's hand. The world seemed to hold its breath once more. Then, with a suddenness that startled Ali, the horse stepped forward and sniffed the oats carefully. It wasn't aggressive, nor was it overly eager. It simply accepted the gift, nibbling gently from his palm. Ali let out a soft sigh of relief. His heart swelled with a quiet joy, but he remained still, watching the horse as it ate. This was a victory, but he knew it was only a small step. The horse was still wild, still untamed. But this moment of connection, however brief, was something special. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood. As the horse finished the oats, it stepped back slightly, its gaze still fixed on Ali. The air between them had changed. There was a mutual understanding, an unspoken promise. Ali wasn't sure what the horse felt, but he knew that this was a turning point. It was the first step in what would be a long journey, not just for him, but for both of them. The horse snorted softly and turned, trotting a few paces away, but it didn't run. It lingered, its dark eyes still watching Ali, as if waiting for him to make the next move. Ali stood quietly for a moment, watching the animal, his heart full. He hadn't tamed the horse, not yet, but this encounter had left an imprint on both of them, a connection that neither would soon forget. And in that fleeting moment, Ali knew that something profound was beginning to unfold. The days passed slowly in the wilderness, each one blending into the next like the shifting colors of the landscape. Ali returned to the clearing every day, his resolve unwavering. He didn't rush. There was no urgency in his steps. Instead, he moved with purpose, with patience, returning to the spot where he had first seen the wild horse. The horse, too, had grown accustomed to Ali's presence. At first, it had been wary, often retreating at the sight of him, running off with a speed that spoke of freedom and raw power. But with each passing day, something changed. The animal no longer bolted at his approach. Instead, it would linger at a distance, its dark eyes tracking him from the edges of the clearing. Ali had learned not to chase it. He knew the horse needed time. Time to understand that he wasn't a threat, time to come to him on its own terms. Every day, he arrived with nothing but his soft words and a few handfuls of oats. He would sit quietly in the same spot, just as he had before, giving the horse space, allowing it to decide when it was ready to get closer. At first, Ali hadn't been sure what to expect. Would the horse ever trust him? Would it come closer? Or would it remain wild and free, untouchable by the hands of humans? The uncertainty lingered in the back of his mind, but he pushed it aside. He was in no rush. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him that the bond between man and beast was not something that could be forced. It took time, and above all, it took trust. On the 5th day, Ali arrived to find the horse already there, grazing in the clearing. It was still distant, its head low, its muscles tense, but it didn't run when it saw him. Ali paused at the edge of the clearing, his heart racing with a quiet excitement. This was a new development, a sign that the horse was beginning to recognize him as part of its world, not as an enemy, but as something else, something more neutral. Ali didn't move right away. He didn't want to startle the animal. Instead, he stood still, watching the horse for several long moments. The horse's mane swayed gently in the breeze, and the golden light of the setting sun caught the sheen of its coat. It was a picture of wild beauty, but there was something softer in the way it moved now. The rigid tension that had once defined its every movement was beginning to ebb. After a long while, Ali knelt down slowly, offering the oats in his palm once again. The gesture was a simple one, but it was the only way he knew how to show the horse that he came in peace. He held the food out, his hand steady, his gaze unwavering. The horse paused, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. For a moment, Ali thought it might turn away, as it had so many times before. But then, something shifted. The horse took a tentative step forward. Ali's heart skipped a beat. It was a small movement, a single step, but it was progress. He held his breath, watching as the animal moved closer. The sound of its hooves on the soft earth was all that could be heard in the silence of the clearing. Another step, and then another. The horse was only a few feet away now. Its eyes never left Ali's face, but there was no sign of fear. Its stance was more relaxed, the tension in its muscles loosening as it approached. Ali's hand remained outstretched, steady and unwavering, as he spoke softly, almost to himself. "It's okay. You're safe." The words hung in the air like a promise, an unspoken bond forming between them. The horse sniffed the oats, its breath warm against Ali's skin, before gingerly nibbling the offering from his hand. For a moment, Ali didn't move. He didn't even dare to blink. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment he had hoped for. The wildness of the horse had not been tamed by force, nor had it been bought with treats. It was the slow, steady building of trust, one small gesture at a time. The horse ate the oats slowly, its eyes flickering from Ali's hand to his face. Ali, in turn, kept his gaze steady, speaking only in soft tones, his voice like a gentle breeze. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. "I just want to help. You don't have to be alone." For the first time, the horse seemed to relax fully. It took a few more steps toward Ali, its eyes softening as it continued to eat from his hand. Ali's heart swelled with a quiet sense of triumph. He had done it. He had reached the horse in a way no one else had. No chains, no ropes, no force, just patience, trust, and understanding. Days passed, and with each visit, the bond between them grew stronger. The horse began to trust Ali more, coming closer each time, its steps more assured. It was no longer running from him. It no longer looked at him with suspicion. Instead, it sought him out, drawn to the calm energy that Ali offered. Ali, too, began to understand the horse better. He learned its movements, its subtle cues. He knew when the horse needed space, and when it was ready to engage. There were moments when the animal would simply stand by his side, its warm presence comforting. And then there were moments of pure connection, when Ali would gently stroke its mane, feeling the soft, powerful muscle beneath. One afternoon, Ali brought a new offering, an apple, its red skin shining in the sunlight. The horse watched him curiously as he sliced it into small pieces. He placed the pieces on the ground in front of him, sitting back, waiting. The horse sniffed the air, clearly interested, but it hesitated, as if unsure whether it was okay to approach. Ali smiled softly and spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Go ahead. It's for you." And just like that, the horse stepped forward, its movement slower now, more confident. It nuzzled the apple, taking a bite, and as it did, Ali felt a deep sense of peace settle within him. This was not just a moment of taming. This was the beginning of a friendship, a quiet, beautiful bond built on trust, respect, and the slow passage of time. Ali knew that the horse was still wild, still untamed in its own way, but he also knew that the barriers between them were slowly fading away. The horse was no longer just a creature of the wild. It was something more, a partner, a companion in the making, and with each day, the bond they shared grew deeper, stronger, unbreakable. The days had stretched into weeks, and each one seemed to bring a new layer of understanding between Ali and the wild horse. The bond they had begun to form was still fragile, delicate, like a thread that could snap at any moment. But with every visit to the clearing, something shifted, something deeper. Ali could feel it in the way the horse would approach him, no longer with caution, but with curiosity. It was no longer just a wild animal, driven by instinct. It was a creature who had learned to trust, to recognize the presence of someone who meant no harm. One crisp morning, the air heavy with the scent of earth and dew, Ali arrived earlier than usual. The sun had not yet fully risen, but there was a soft light on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The clearing was still, the world holding its breath in the quiet pre-dawn hours. Ali stepped into the familiar space, his boots making soft sounds on the ground, his heart full of anticipation. It had been a few days since his last visit, and he had no way of knowing if the horse would be there today. But as he walked toward the spot where he usually sat, he saw it, a flicker of movement in the distance. There, grazing in the field, was the chestnut stallion, its coat glistening in the early light. It stood tall and proud, the morning sun illuminating its strong form. Ali's breath caught in his throat. The horse had not run off when it saw him. Instead, it simply stood, its head lifted, its dark eyes scanning him from across the clearing. Ali smiled softly, a sense of warmth washing over him. He had come to know this animal in ways that words could not describe. Through each silent encounter, each slow gesture of trust, he had learned to see the world from the horse's perspective. Ali knelt down, offering the usual handful of oats. His movements were deliberate, slow, showing no sign of urgency. He had learned by now that the horse responded best when given space and patience. He spoke softly, as he always did, his voice steady and calm. "Good morning," he whispered, though he knew the horse could not understand the words. The tone was what mattered. The calmness, the reassurance. To his surprise, the horse began to walk toward him. Slowly at first, with a measured step, as if still unsure but willing to test the waters. Ali didn't move, keeping his posture neutral, allowing the horse to come to him. Each step the animal took was a small victory. Each step meant more than the last. The clearing seemed to hold its breath, the world pausing as if aware of the significance of this moment. Ali's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his composure. The horse was now only a few feet away, its dark eyes never leaving Ali's face. It paused, inhaling deeply, before taking another step closer. Ali extended his hand, palm open, the oats resting gently in his fingers. He didn't force the issue. He didn't expect the horse to come closer, but he wanted to offer a gesture of peace, of friendship. The stallion stopped, sniffing the air around Ali's hand. For a brief moment, it hesitated, uncertain. Ali held his breath, waiting. It had taken weeks for the horse to reach this point, and every move from here on out mattered. He knew that rushing things now could undo everything they had built. And then, as if something inside the horse had clicked, it moved forward, nudging Ali's hand gently with its nose. It was tentative at first, but there was a clear shift. Ali exhaled, his heart full, as he slowly let the horse take the oats from his hand. The soft crunching of the oats as the horse ate was the only sound that filled the air. Ali smiled to himself, watching the animal, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. This moment wasn't about taming the horse, not in the way people had always understood it. This moment was about mutual respect, about understanding that there was a world beyond the wild, a world where trust could grow, where fear could be set aside. The horse finished the oats and stood still for a moment, its gaze lingering on Ali's face. There was no hesitation now, no suspicion. The wildness was still there, but it no longer controlled the animal. Instead, there was something else, an unspoken connection, a bond that had taken shape through patience and time. Ali reached out, his hand trembling slightly with the weight of the moment. He had waited for this, longed for it, and now, it was happening. The horse didn't shy away. It didn't flinch or pull back. Instead, it leaned into the touch, just a slight nudge against Ali's palm. The breakthrough moment had arrived. Ali's fingers brushed through the horse's soft mane, feeling the warmth of its coat beneath his hand. It was a simple touch, but it meant everything. The wild horse, once so untamed, so unreachable, had allowed him to connect in the most profound way. It wasn't just about food or trust anymore. It was about presence, about respect for each other's space and boundaries. The horse stood there for a long moment, allowing Ali to stroke its mane, the two of them standing in perfect silence, the bond between them deepening with every passing second. Ali's heart swelled with emotion. He had never imagined that he would reach this point, never imagined that a creature so wild, so free, would allow him into its world. But here they were, together, in this shared space, this shared moment of understanding. Ali could sense the horse's presence in a way that words could never capture. The trust between them had been built, piece by piece, over time. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment of patience, every quiet visit to the clearing. The breakthrough had come not with a loud gesture, but with a small, quiet act of trust. As the horse pulled away gently, its dark eyes still watching Ali, the bond was no longer fragile. It was real, solid, unspoken but understood. The horse didn't need to remain wild to be free. It didn't need to run from humans to be itself. It was free, in its own way, because it had learned to trust, to allow someone in, to form a connection that was born of mutual respect. Ali stood slowly, looking at the horse one last time before it turned and trotted back into the wild, its powerful form fading into the distance. But this time, Ali didn't feel sadness. He didn't feel loss. Instead, he felt hope, a quiet, unwavering hope that, no matter how far the horse roamed, they would always share this moment, this bond. The breakthrough moment had arrived, and with it, a new chapter had begun, not just for Ali, but for the wild horse as well. The days that followed were a blend of quiet triumph and uncertainty. Ali had made incredible progress with the wild horse. The bond between them had grown deeper, more solid, and with each visit to the clearing, the trust they shared seemed to strengthen. It was clear now that the horse was no longer the untamable creature it once was. It sought Ali out, grazing peacefully near him, and would even allow him to gently stroke its mane without flinching. For Ali, it felt like a small victory, one that he cherished deeply. But as with all stories of connection, there was a deeper layer, something Ali hadn't anticipated, something he hadn't seen coming. It was a feeling, a tugging at the edges of his mind, a sense that the journey wasn't quite over yet. In fact, it was only just beginning. It was one late afternoon when the unexpected twist unfolded. Ali arrived at the clearing as usual, but something was different. The horse wasn't there. Not at first, anyway. Ali stood for a moment, scanning the open field. It was a quiet day, the air thick with the scent of pine and the earth beneath his boots soft with dew. The wind rustled through the leaves, but there was no sign of the horse. He felt a pang of concern. He waited for a while, his mind racing. Was the horse gone? Had it left the clearing for good? He tried not to let the worry show, but he couldn't deny the nagging feeling in his chest. After what felt like an eternity, Ali decided to walk further into the woods, hoping to catch sight of the horse in the distance. The forest was dense, the trees towering over him, their leaves whispering in the breeze. He moved cautiously, aware of the possibility that the horse might be nearby, watching him from the shadows. As he ventured deeper, a faint sound reached his ears, something he hadn't expected to hear, the sound of hooves. The sharp rhythm echoed through the trees, fast and purposeful. Ali froze, his heart pounding. It wasn't the casual, slow gait of the horse he knew. This was different. The hooves were pounding with urgency, with an almost frantic energy. Ali's instincts told him that something was wrong, and without thinking, he rushed toward the sound. The woods seemed to narrow around him, the trees growing thicker, the underbrush more tangled. The hooves grew louder, and Ali's pace quickened. His breath came faster as he pushed through the dense foliage, his heart racing not just with exertion but with fear. The sound of hooves was accompanied now by another sound, a high, strained whinny, one that didn't belong to the horse Ali had come to know. It was filled with panic, with distress. Ali burst into a small clearing, and the sight that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. The horse he had grown so close to was standing at the center of the clearing, but it wasn't alone. Around it were several figures, men on horseback, all wearing dark, weathered clothes. Their horses were large and powerful, and their eyes gleamed with a predatory sharpness. The wild horse stood in the middle of the group, its eyes wide with fear. It was backed into a corner, the men slowly closing in, trying to herd it like a wild animal. The horse's body was tense, its muscles trembling. It had nowhere to go. Ali could see the fear in its eyes, the same fear he had seen in the first days when it would bolt at the slightest sound. But now, there was no escape. The men were too close. Without thinking, Ali charged into the clearing, his voice ringing out with a sense of urgency. "Stop! Leave it alone!" The men turned, surprised by the sudden appearance of the young man. One of them, a burly figure with a grizzled beard, smirked at Ali, his eyes narrowing. "Who are you, boy?" he sneered, sizing Ali up. "This is a wild horse. We've got every right to take it." Ali's chest tightened. He knew these men. They were known for capturing wild horses to sell them at the market. He had heard rumors of their tactics, of how they used fear and force to break the spirit of the animals they caught. His heart sank as he realized what was happening. These men were about to take the horse he had come to love, to rip it away from the freedom it had known. "I don't care," Ollie said firmly, his voice unwavering. "This horse belongs in the wild. You can't take it." The men laughed, clearly amused by his defiance. "You don't understand, boy. We're not asking you. Step aside if you know what's good for you." But Ollie didn't step aside. He planted his feet firmly on the ground, looking the men in the eye, not allowing his fear to show. His hand instinctively went to the pocket where he carried the last of the oats he had saved for the horse. He wasn't going to let these men take it, not without a fight. Suddenly, there was a shift. The wild horse, sensing Ali's determination, stepped forward. The men hesitated for just a moment, unsure of how to respond to the unexpected challenge. Ali slowly moved toward the horse, his hand outstretched, but the wild animal's eyes were fixed on the men, not on him. It was ready to defend itself, to fight for its freedom. The air between them crackled with tension. It was no longer just about the horse. It was about something larger, something deeper. Ali wasn't just trying to protect the animal. He was fighting for its right to remain free, for the bond they had shared to mean something, for this moment of trust they had built not to be torn apart by greed and force. One of the men, the leader, gestured to his companions. "Get him out of the way," he ordered. Before Ali could react, one of the men spurred his horse forward, aiming to push Ali aside. But the wild horse, sensing the threat, bolted forward with a sudden, powerful leap. It was an explosion of energy, its hooves striking the ground with a thunderous force. In an instant, the horse was in motion, darting between the men, its powerful legs propelling it through the clearing with a speed and agility that none of the men had anticipated. Ali watched in awe as the horse, with a force of will he had never seen before, fought back. It was no longer the timid, uncertain creature he had first met. This was a horse who knew how to survive, who had learned to protect itself and the one person it had come to trust. In that moment, Ali knew the true nature of the horse had been revealed. This wasn't just a wild animal, it was a survivor, a warrior. And with that realization came a deep sense of pride and awe. He had never imagined the horse would fight so fiercely, but now, as it charged through the men, it was clear. The bond they had formed had ignited something within it. The men reeled back, shocked by the unexpected defiance. They hadn't counted on the horse's will to fight, its will to be free. And for the first time in his life, Ali knew that the wild had not been tamed by him. It had only been waiting for the right moment to show its true strength. In the aftermath of the wild horse's explosive charge, the clearing was still. The men had retreated, grumbling and cursing as they gathered their horses and moved back into the woods. They had underestimated both the horse and Ali. They hadn't expected the young man to stand his ground, and they certainly hadn't expected the horse to defend itself so fiercely. As their figures disappeared into the trees, Ali remained standing in the center of the clearing, his breath still heavy from the adrenaline that had coursed through him only moments ago. The wild horse was now standing at the edge of the clearing, its dark eyes scanning the horizon. It was no longer the frightened, skittish animal that had first appeared before him. Now, it was something more, a creature with a fierce independence, a fire in its spirit that refused to be broken. Ali watched as it stood tall, its mane blowing in the wind, the rising sun casting a golden glow across its muscular frame. The bond between them had shifted once again, but this time, it was different. There was no more hesitation, no more uncertainty. Ali had not only saved the horse from capture, but had also shown it something profound. That trust, once given, could be reciprocated in ways that went beyond human understanding. It wasn't just about the oats or the gentle touch on the mane anymore. It was about the shared respect for each other's freedom, for each other's spirit. Ali took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. He had always known that the path to truly understanding the wild horse was never going to be straightforward. He had thought that taming it would be a process of bringing it closer, of breaking down its defenses. But he had learned that taming wasn't about control. It was about respect, patience, and understanding that freedom was just as important to the horse as it was to him. As he approached the horse, he spoke softly, his voice calm and steady. "You're free," he said, his words a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. "I'm not here to take that away from you. You're not my prisoner." The wild horse turned its head, its eyes meeting Ali's with an intensity that felt almost like a promise. It wasn't just looking at him now. It was seeing him, as he had seen it all along. There was a quiet understanding between them, an unspoken language that didn't require words. Ali took another step forward, his hand extended, but this time, he didn't reach for the oats. He didn't need to. The horse was no longer the wild creature he had first encountered in the clearing. It had become something more, a part of the world that Ali inhabited, not through force, but through choice. It had chosen him in its own way, just as he had chosen to respect its freedom. For a moment, the horse stood still, watching him, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Then, with a sudden movement, it took a step toward Ali. Slowly, cautiously, it approached, its hooves soft against the earth. Ali's heart swelled as the horse moved closer, its presence filling the space between them. It was a moment of pure connection, a moment where nothing else mattered. The world, the forest, the struggles of life, all faded away as the two of them stood in that small clearing, surrounded by nothing but the air and the earth beneath their feet. The horse nuzzled his hand gently, its breath warm against his skin. Ali smiled, his eyes glistening with a mixture of awe and gratitude. This wasn't just a victory of one man over nature. It was a victory of respect, of mutual understanding. It was the culmination of all the quiet moments of patience, all the silent conversations, all the small victories that had led to this one. And in that moment, Ali realized something else. The horse didn't need him to protect it. It didn't need him to fight its battles. What it needed was someone who could see it for what it was, wild, untamed, free. And that was exactly what Ali had given it. He had shown the horse that it wasn't a creature to be feared or dominated. It was a partner, a being with its own dignity and autonomy. The horse stepped back, its eyes never leaving Ali. For a long time, they stood there together, simply being in each other's presence. It was a rare, beautiful moment, one that few people would ever experience. But Ali understood now that the greatest reward was not in taming the horse, but in sharing that space with it, in letting it remain wild, free, and unbroken. The sun began to rise higher in the sky, its light now fully bathing the clearing in warmth. The horse lifted its head, ears perked, as if sensing the change in the air, as if understanding that its freedom was a gift, not a curse. It turned its gaze toward the horizon, where the open field stretched endlessly. With a final look at Ali, the horse turned and trotted toward the woods, its movements graceful and powerful. Ali watched it go, feeling a sense of peace in his heart. He knew this was the end of their journey together in this space, but it was also the beginning of something new. The horse would roam free, but Ali would always remember the bond they had shared. In the years to come, he would visit the clearing often, but it was no longer about trying to tame the wild horse. It was about honoring the relationship they had formed, one that was built on respect, patience, and understanding. As the horse disappeared into the trees, Ali smiled to himself. The bond they had created would never be broken, not by time, not by distance, and certainly not by force. It was a bond of true freedom, a freedom that neither of them would ever take for granted. And in the quiet, peaceful solitude of the clearing, Ali knew that the wild horse had changed him as much as he had changed it. In the end, they were both freer for having met. After weeks of hard work and patience, a strong bond had formed between Ali and the wild horse. The horse was no longer the frightened and insecure animal Ali had first encountered. Now, it would approach him, showing trust. But one day, when Ali went to the forest, he found that the horse was missing. After waiting for a while, Ali ventured deeper into the woods, and soon he heard the sound of hooves. He followed the sound and found that some men were attempting to capture the horse. These men, who were known for capturing wild horses to sell them, were trying to remove the horse from its natural habitat. Ali immediately intervened and defended the horse's freedom. In the process, the wild horse, showing its courage, charged at the men, forcing them to retreat. Ali realized in that moment that the horse was not just a wild animal but a free spirit, willing to fight for its freedom. The horse understood the bond between them and, with Ali's help, was able to remain free. Ali promised the horse that he wouldn't cage it, but would instead honor its freedom. The horse slowly approached Ali, sniffing his hand and looking at him with a sense of recognition, as if acknowledging him as its protector. Ali spoke softly, telling the horse that it would remain free, and their relationship would be based on respect and trust. Finally, the horse turned and walked into the woods, heading towards its freedom. Ali knew that their bond would continue, but it would never be based on captivity or control. He cherished their relationship, understanding that it was built on mutual respect and trust. For Ali, this experience was not just about saving the horse, but learning to appreciate the freedom and autonomy of wild animals. He would always honor this bond, knowing that it would never be broken, even if the horse remained wild and free. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon for more fascinating stories. Leave your thoughts in the comments and share this video with your friends.